A lot of people ask what's stable, understable, and overstable. Flight numbers. What the hell are flight numbers? Flight numbers are the 4 numbers in sequence on a disc. Sometimes they're not on discs, especially if they have special stamps. This is the Ballista Pro. So let's review flight numbers first. This one is a 14403. 14 is the speed of the disc. The disc speed could be anywhere between 1 and 14. 4 would be the glide. Glide can be anywhere between, I think, 0 and 7. 0 is going to be your turn. If you remember your XY axis in geometry, 0, it's right down the middle. 3, that's going to be your fade. Okay, so we're going to go over this real quick. Spin, how fast the disc goes. So this is a fast disc, a 14. 4 is glide. So this has a medium to high glide on it. 0 is the turn. So it doesn't have much turn on it. That means that when you throw it, if I'm a righty, it's not going to go out here that much. If you're a lefty, it's not going to go out here too much. It's going to pretty much stay straight, should stay straight, or you're going to have to hyzer it to get any turn, or manipulate the disc maybe and hyzer it to get a turn, depending upon whether you're righty or lefty. Okay? So I always say okay. Get it? Okay? Like you're going to respond. Okay, so 3 is the fade. And the fade is after the disc is slowing down and done spinning, it's going to fade, whether you're lefty or righty. How much it fades depends on this number. Usually, it's kind of like conspiracy theories. Either you're kind of into them or you're not. Some people say that flight numbers don't matter. In a way, they don't, because you can manipulate discs to kind of do what you want if you know how to do so. But I would say, as a beginner, this is a good guide for you to start with. Okay, so 14403. When I throw this as a beginner, it's going to go. As a lefty, it's going to go up and it's going to go pretty quick because, one, I don't have a lot of power to throw, to spin it, or maybe not enough experience how to spin it and how to throw it in a way that I'm going to get lots of distance. However, this is one of the most maximum distance thrown discs. Like if you want to throw max distance, you throw an overstable disc because you can, as a lefty or a righty, so it's a lefty, you can force it on an ante and it takes a long time for that 3 fade, number 3 fade, to get over and go into that fade. So that's why you force it this way. So it has to sit there almost like it's thinking. But as it slows its spin, it'll eventually go this way. As a righty, you throw it and it goes out, and eventually as it slows its spin, it fades this way. 3 can be a pretty hard fade. Now, how do you determine if this is overstable or understable? I just picked it up and I said it's a 3 fade? No, that's not what it is. Let's do a little math. I hate math, trust me. So you can see, looking out into the sky as the background, the 11.5 negative 2. So it's 11 speed disc, not as fast as that Ballista Pro. It's not as speedy. The 5, meaning it has a little more glide than that Ballista because it was a 4, if you remember. Negative 2, meaning that the turn will be, negative 2 on your XY axis. 2 is the fade. So if you take the last 2 numbers, negative 2 and 2, add them together. I know, I hate negatives, I hate fractions, yada yada. Just bear with me. If you take negative 2 and 2, add them together, what do you get? 0. I hated math, trust me, I went to Catholic school. This is a Gateway blade. Thank you, Woz. And the numbers on here, if you can't read them, that's okay. I can't either. I don't have my glasses on. This is an overstable, it even tells you it's overstable. Sometimes on discs you'll see OS or US, meaning understable or overstable. Sometimes it'll just outright tell you overstable. So as I'm saying, overstable fairway driver. To determine if this statement wasn't here and someone told you this is a 9503, you take the last 2 numbers. You take the turn and you take the fade, the 0 and the 3, add them together. What do you get? 0 plus 3 is 3. That's right, people. So anything that ends in a positive number after adding those numbers is overstable. Anything that adds up to a negative number is understable. Here, Part Bells is a Discraft ESP Avenger SS. Paul Macbeth, 5-time world champion, yada yada. It is a distance driver. It is a 10 speed. It is a 5 glide, a negative 3 turn, a 1 on the fade. Let's add those last 2 numbers up, negative 3 and 1. Negative 3 plus 1 is negative 2. This is an understable. And this is a positive number after we add the last 2 numbers up. So let's watch them fly. When I throw this one, I expect it to go straight on my throw, or it's going to go a little bit left and eventually fade right. But it's going to be minimal fade. Goes very minimal fade. You saw it stayed straight a lot of the time. It even kind of wanted to keep going left on that -3 turn. Now, remember this is a 0-3. This is a +3. Any guesses which way it's going to go or how it's going to fly? I try to throw it as straight as possible and not on a hyzer at all. You might catch me throwing a hyzer, but I try to throw it very straight. You saw it went straight, 0 turn. It faded very heavily, very quickly once it started to slow down. I think I'm about the same speed. This is a champion Shryke. It's about 170 some odd grams, and it's 13.6, -1, 2. When I add that together, -1 + 2 is +1. All right, my mathlete. We got the Ballista Pro here. Let's watch him fly. Again, here's our Overstable. So I do it straight. Heavy fade 3 comes our +1. Now some may call that overstable, that Shryke that I just threw, or some may call it stable, because it is pretty straight flying with a typical fade at the end, not too extreme, not too dramatic. So that's what you get when you have something like this. Everyone's favorite, the wave. This is 11.5, -2, 2. -2 + 2 is 0. We would expect this to fly pretty straight, and that 2, that +2 at the end, should definitely fade. Ooh, that's great. I love the wave. Oh, that's great. So pretty. Okay, so let me fix with you real quick. I just showed you all this Shryke, right? Again, it's an Innova Champion Plastic Shryke, 170 grams, very pretty, even though it's beat up, +1. That making it a stable, overstable distance driver. Now, this is also a Shryke. It's a lighter Shryke. It is a distance driver. G-Star, that means G-Star plastic. It's a different type of plastic than this one. Everyone has their preference. It's about the feel. Sometimes the way they handle themselves when they're out of the box. Sometimes how they behave or maybe one gets beat up more than the other. What it comes down to is a +1, and it makes it stable to overstable. And this one I'm holding in a different plastic and much lighter, about 30 grams lighter. This one is a 13.6, -2, 2. -2 + 2 is 0. +1 and 0, but it's the same mold. There is some difference. If you look, you can see that it's domier on this one. This one has more of a dome. It's actually softer, squishy. And this one is much more smooth on the rim. There's a little bit of dome here, you kind of feel it, but it's not as defined. So let's see the difference, being that this is more stable to understable. Lighter disc will fly a little more understable, by the way. It went straight to +1, right? So it's going to be stable and then do its fade with the 2. This one, -2, 2. Remember, this is a 0. You see what it did there? Damn, that's like 300 feet flawless. That's why you get lighter discs, by the way, folks. Once you get a little bit of a hold on how to throw distance drivers, let that be a little tip of the day. You're going to throw further. That flew straight, went left, and eventually faded right. But it did that -2, went left, and then faded right. It did that even though it's the same mold. It flies differently. It's lighter, not as heavy. The other one was heavier. It had a different turn and had the same fade number. But the end result, one is a +1 to make it stable to slightly overstable to understable. Absolutely understable. Even though it comes to a 0, stable can be understable. Stable can be overstable. Just by a little bit. I'm going to talk about my Infinite Pharaoh. Look, it's a 13.6, -1, 2. So it's a 13 speed, meaning it's a distance driver. Arguably, watch out Reddit, arguably a 10 and up could be a distance driver to some people, could be up to 10 could be a fairway driver, and 11 and up could be a distance driver. Either way, they're faster discs, 10 and up. This is a 13, so it's pretty fast. Definitely a distance driver. 6 means it has lots of glide. It'll hold in the air longer, kind of like paraglider. it'll have more glide, so it'll stay up in the air a little bit longer. -1, meaning that the turn is -1 on your XY axis. And then a 2, meaning that it's 2 fade. So 2 on the XY axis, go over 2. What does that get when we add up -1 and 2? +1. Here's the caveat. This is a beaten in infinite Faro. Love these, by the way. Buy them new and you'll get a very reliable flight according to the flight numbers, in my opinion, in my experience. And on this one, though, it decided, especially on tournament day, that it was going to be so beaten in that it's just going to start flying understable. So even though it's a +1, a beaten in or an old disc, if you buy a used disc, may not fly according to the flight numbers. That's why some people say, you shouldn't listen to the flight numbers. That's how you throw it, right? I can get behind that. That flew very, very straight, almost like a 0, almost -1. And it did fade, but I don't call that a fade, too. It's like a fade 1. It's been beaten in. Mid-ranges. What are mid-ranges anyway? Mid-ranges usually have a rim that's a little bit wider and fatter than your drivers. Not as fat or large as a putter, unless you're talking about a thin putter like the Zone by Discraft. This is a Latitude 64 Fuse. This is a great disc for beginners. It is a 5.6 -1 0. It's actually quite understable. -1 and 0, no fade. So let's see how much no fade it has. That's what 0 fade looks like. How about an Overstable one? All right, this is a Rock 3. This is one of the classic Innova discs. It's a mid-range. It's a 5.403. When we add 0 and 3 together, children, what do we get? 3. It's even in the thing here, Rock 3. It even does the answer is on the test. So I always love when that happens. Anyway, so let's throw this Rock 3. It's Overstable, obviously, because it's +3. That is a very beaten in Rock 3. I would expect the 3 fade to go much harder and much more slanted on that 3 to get over 3 spaces on your XY axis. Axiom Hex. It's a hex of a disc. 5.5 -1 1. That flew a little bit more to the numbers than the Eclipse plastic. In my opinion, in my experience, Eclipse plastic does not fly like the numbers say. They're very different. So that Fishing Hex, that flies like 5.5 -1 1. That other one, as you saw, not so much. That one sat in the sun a little bit too, the sun. Maybe that had a problem. This is a sleeper, by the way. The Viking Rune, oh yeah. This is the best putter ever. It's a straight flyer. A 2.400. I once shot this 125 feet on an approach shot, made it in my first tournament ever. Have you ever had a cool shot like that ever? No. I'd pick one up if I were you. Oh, it's so pretty. By the way, what does a putter look like? Wide rim, very wide, heavy, deep rim. Deep rim. Look how my fingers are down in this, like about an inch or so. 1.700. This is a catch disc too. You can play with it. Look how straight that fucker is. That is one straight fucker. Of course, I always got to talk about every damn video. The West Side. The West Side. Harp. The Harp. All right, my new homie Ashton. Welcome to being a part pal on the channel, Ashton. Thank you for joining. He also threw a harp, and my wife also owns a harp. These are great discs. They sit down. They sit down for you most of the time, unless you're on a hill. I had a bad experience. Anyway, so these are great. I actually threw this yesterday all over the place at Northtown, and it just sat down for me, and I played like par for most of the course. It was great. Had a great round. It's a 4.303. 0 plus 3 is 3, kids. That's great. So shout out Sayananda. Shout out Westside Disc. Shout out Matty O. So what's it gonna do? Overstable. It's gonna fade. It is very true to its numbers. Oh. And it sits. Watch it sit. Look at that. can't sit. Oh, sit so good, like a well-behaved dog. You've seen mids, you've seen drivers. We didn't do fairway drivers. Let's do a few. Let's just throw some. And I'll throw the numbers down here. Let's listen to some tunes too.
I never dreamed that I'd meet somebody like you. And I never dreamed that I'd lose somebody like you. No, I don't wanna fall in love. No, I don't wanna fall in love.
So what did we learn today? Anything that ends in a positive number after adding those numbers is overstable. Anything that adds up to a negative number is understable. Anyway, that's all I got for today. Thanks for tuning in. Like, subscribe. A lot of you don't subscribe. Subscribe! And may your teeth be short and may your big disc energy be long. Peace.